A light exists in spring, not present on the year. At any other period, when March is scarcely here. A color stands abroad on solitary fields that science cannot overtake, but human nature feels. It waits upon the lawn, it shows the furthest tree. Upon the furthest slope, you know, it almost speaks to you. Then as horizons step or noons report away, without the formula of sound, it passes and we stay. A quality of loss affecting our content, as trade has suddenly encroached upon a sacrament. A Light Exists in Spring by Emily Dickinson.
I think this is the start of something good. Spring is going to be a joyous time.
Emily Dickinson has such a way with words. I thought long and hard the last 7 days to come up with a way to approach and describe the changing of seasons. Spring is my favorite season. It's obvious. It's a rebirth of life. It's a renewal of hope. When everything seems so bleak and then suddenly changes clearly. In this vlogging challenge, I wanted to try to articulate what that reprieve is, what that jubilation is, when finally the signs of spring appear. But alas, 7 days isn't nearly enough to come up with something as articulate as I think Emily Dickinson is able to. So I chose to use her poem, A Light Exists in Spring, as a way to articulate that. Now, whether you're religious or not, there's something divine and spiritual about the coming of spring that you don't get from any other change in the seasons. Dickinson also acknowledges this fact at the end of the poem. It seems like from January to March, there's an incredible metamorphosis that happens in the environment around you. Now, I'm sorry to those who don't live in a climate where there's 4 seasons, but it's truly amazing. I think I cherish this change so much because of the anticipation and suffering of the previous season afforded. Spring is a change we have to accept. It's a rebirth as we're forced to witness the death of greenery and life around us. Spring is the change we have to accept. It's a rebirth as we were forced to witness the death of the greenery and life around us in the previous year. My hope in this video was to capture that anticipation, that change per se, and try to portray what the relief feels like at the end when you first see the first flowers push up from their frozen prisons below. There was one thing that I failed to acknowledge, that spring is not guaranteed. It certainly does have its shortcomings. As Dickinson puts it in the months of January and February, that a light exists in spring, when March is scarcely here. Now, something that I noticed after reading this poem is that Dickinson actually fails to acknowledge this same point, that spring is the most volatile of the seasons. And that is what I actually unfortunately experienced this week while shooting this video.
All that's left is to figure out how to get rid of pigeons.
A light exists in spring, not present on the year. At any other period, when March is scarcely here. A color stands abroad on solitary fields that science cannot overtake, but human nature feels. It waits upon the lawn, it shows the furthest tree. Upon the furthest slope, you know, it almost speaks to you. Then as horizons step or noons report away, without the formula of sound, it passes and we stay. A quality of loss affecting our content, as trade has suddenly encroached upon a sacrament. A Light Exists in Spring by Emily Dickinson.
Well, I sure wasn't expecting this.
I think there's cycles in life just as there are seasons. There's highs and then there's lows. There's happiness, and then there's tribulation. When we think all is well, we will encounter the most snow and the harshest temperatures of the year in the most inopportune times in our life. Moreover, it will happen when we were so sure that spring would come. It's unfortunate. Nothing is assured and everything is changing. But it is how we decide to process and interpret those times in our life that is most important. We aren't entitled to spring. However, God always gives it to us. It is our faith in this principle that will allow us to endure the harshest of winters and seasons in our life. It'll be the most joy when we finally see those signs of spring, even if they're interrupted. Thanks so much, guys, for watching this content. Really appreciate it. Hopefully you enjoyed this little expose. I look forward to making more content like this in the future, and I'm glad that I have the opportunity to make this video in 7 days in the Casey Neistat movie 7 Day Challenge. Hit that like button, subscribe if you want to see more. I'll catch you on the next one.